Welcome to Spiritual Sessions with your host Leanne. It's wonderful to have you back, and I'm really looking forward to continuing on with the book that we're reading at the moment, the Kybalion by the three initiates. And really, as it unfolds, we'll really get to taste and experience the wisdom within this book. We're on chapter 2 at the moment, but it only keeps on getting more and more exciting. So thank you for taking your time to be here with me to enjoy this book, because it brings me a lot of joy to do this for you and just to read it myself. So thank you so much. And without further ado, let's get into chapter 2 here on Spiritual Sessions. Chapter 2. The 7 Hermetic Principles. The principles of truth are 7. He who knows these, understandingly, possesses the magic key before whose touch all the doors of the temple fly open. The Kybalion. The 7 Hermetic Principles, upon which the entire Hermetic philosophy is based, are as follows. 1. The principle of mentalism. 2. The principle of correspondence. 3. The principle of vibration. 4. The principle of polarity. 5. The principle of rhythm. 6. The principle of cause and effect. 7. The principle of gender. These 7 principles will be discussed and explained as we proceed with these lessons. A short explanation of each, however, may as well be given at this point. 1. The principle of mentalism. The all is mind. The universe is mental. The Kybalion. This principle embodies the truth that all is mind. It explains that the all, which is the substantial reality underlying all the outward manifestations and appearances which we know under the terms of the material universe, the phenomena of life, matter, energy, and, in short, all that is apparent to our material senses, is spirit, which in itself is unknowable and undefinable, but which may be considered and thought of as universal, infinite, living mind. It also explains that all the phenomenal world or universe is simply a mental creation of the all, subject to the laws of created things, and that the universe as a whole and in its parts or units has its existence in the mind of the all, in which mind we live and move and have our being. This principle, by establishing the mental nature of the universe, easily explains all of the varied mental and physical phenomena that occupy such a large portion of the public attention, and which, without such explanation, are non-understandable and defy scientific treatment. An understanding of this great Hermetic principle of mentalism enables the individual to readily grasp the laws of the mental universe and to apply the same to his well-being and advancement. The Hermetic student is enabled to apply intelligently the great mental laws instead of using them in a haphazard manner. With the master key in his possession, the student may unlock the many doors of the mental and psychic temple of knowledge and enter the same freely and intelligently. This principle explains the true nature of energy, power, and matter, and why and how all of these things are subordinate to the mastery of mind. One of the old Hermetic masters wrote long ages ago, "He who grasps the truth of the mental nature of the universe is well advanced on the path to mystery." And these words are as true today as at the time they were first written. Without this master key, mastery is impossible, and the student knocks in vain at the many doors of the temple. 2. The principle of correspondence. As above, so below. As below, so above. The Kybalion. This principle embodies the truth that there is always a correspondence between the laws and phenomena of the various planes of being and life. The old Hermetic axiom ran in these words: as above, so below. As below, so above. And the grasping of this principle gives one the means of solving many a dark paradox and hidden secret of nature. There are planes beyond our knowing, but when we apply the principle of correspondence to them, we are able to understand much that would otherwise be unknowable to us. This principle is of universal application and manifestation. On the various planes of the material, mental, and spiritual universe, it is an universal law. The ancient Hermetists considered this principle as one of the most important mental instruments by which man was able to pry aside the obstacles which hid from view the unknown. Its use even tore aside the veil of Isis, to the extent that a glimpse of the face of the goddess might be caught. Just as knowledge of the principles of geometry enables man to measure distant suns and their movements, while seated in his observatory, so a knowledge of the principle of correspondence enables man to reason intelligently from the known to the unknown. Studying the monad, he understands the archangel. 3. The principle of vibration. Nothing rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. The Kybalion. This principle embodies the truth that everything is in motion. Everything vibrates. Nothing is at rest. Facts which modern science endorses and, with each new science discovery, tends to verify. And yet this Hermetic principle was enunciated thousands of years ago by the masters of ancient Egypt. This principle explains that the differences between different manifestations of matter, energy, mind, and even spirit result largely from varying rates of vibration. From the all, which is pure spirit, down to the grossest form of matter, all is in vibration. The higher the vibration, the higher the position in the scale. The vibration of spirit is at such an infinite rate of intensity and rapidity that it is practically at rest, just as a rapidly moving wheel seems to be motionless. And at the other end of the scale, there are gross forms of matter whose vibrations are so low as to seem at rest. Between these poles, there are millions upon millions of varying degrees of vibration. From corpuscle and electron, atom and molecule, to worlds and universes, everything is in vibratory motion. This is also true on the planes of energy and force, which are but different degrees of vibration, and also on the mental planes, whose states depend upon vibrations, and even onto the spiritual planes. An understanding of this principle with the appropriate formulas enables Hermetic students to control their own mental vibrations as well as those of others. The masters also apply this principle to the conquering of natural phenomena in various ways. He who understands the principle of vibration has grasped the scepter of power, says one of the old writers. 4. The principle of polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites, like and unlike, are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. The Kybalion. This principle embodies the truth that everything is dual. Everything has two poles. Everything has its pair of opposites, all of which were old Hermetic axioms. It explains the old paradoxes that have perplexed so many, which have been stated as follows. Thesis and antithesis are identical in nature, but different in degree. Opposites are the same, differing only in degree. The pairs of opposites may be reconciled. Extremes meet. Everything is and isn't at the same time. All truths are but half-truths. Every truth is half false. There are two sides to everything, etc., etc., etc. It explains that in everything there are two poles, or opposite aspects, and that opposites are really only the two extremes of the same thing, with many varying degrees between them. To illustrate, heat and cold. Although opposites are really the same thing, the differences consisting merely of degrees of the same thing. Look at your thermometer and see if you can discover where heat terminates and cold begins. There is no such thing as absolute heat or absolute cold. The two terms, heat and cold, simply indicate a varying degree of the same thing. And that same thing, which manifests as heat and cold, is merely a form, a variety, a rate of vibration. So heat and cold are simply the two poles of that which we call heat, and the phenomena attendant thereupon are manifestations of the principle of polarity. The same principle manifests in the case of light and darkness, which are the same thing, the difference consisting of varying degrees between the two poles of the phenomena. Where does darkness leave off and light begin? What is the difference between large and small, hard and soft, between black and white, between sharp and dull, between positive and negative? The principle of polarity explains these paradoxes, and no other principle can supersede it. The same principle operates on the mental plane. Let us take a radical and extreme example, that of love and hate. Two mental states apparently totally different, and yet there are degrees of hate and degrees of love, and a middle point in which we use the terms like or dislike, which shade into each other so gradually that sometimes we are at a loss to know whether we like or dislike or neither. And all are simply degrees of the same thing, as you will see if you will but think a moment. And, more than this, and considered of more importance by Hermeticists, it is possible to change the vibrations of hate to the vibrations of love, in one's own mind and in the mind of others. Many of you who read these lines have had personal experiences of the involuntary, rapid transformation from love to hate, and the reverse, in your own case and that of others. And you will therefore realize the possibility of this being accomplished by the use of the will, by means of the Hermetic formulas. Good and evil are but poles of the same thing, and the Hermetist understands the art of transmuting evil into good by the means of application of the principle of polarity. In short, the art of polarization becomes a phase of mental alchemy known and practiced by the ancient and modern Hermetic masters. An understanding of the principle will enable one to change his own polarity as well as that of others, if he will devote the time and study necessary to master the art. 5. The principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. The Kybalion. This principle embodies the truth that in everything there is manifested a measured motion, to and fro, a flow and inflow, a swing backward and forward, a pendulum-like movement, a tide-like ebb and flow, a high tide and a low tide, between the two poles which exist in accordance with the principle of polarity described a moment ago. There is always an action and a reaction, an advance and a retreat, a rising and a sinking. This is the affairs of the universe, suns, worlds, men, animals, mind, energy, and matter. This law is manifest in the creation and destruction of worlds, in the rise and fall of nations, in the life of all things, and finally, in the mental states of man. And it is with this latter that the Hermeticists find the understanding of the principle most important. The Hermeticists have grasped this principle, finding its universal application, and have also discovered certain means to overcome its effects in themselves by the use of the appropriate formula and methods. They apply the mental law of neutralization. They cannot annul the principle or cause it to cease its operation, but they have learned how to escape the effects upon themselves to a certain degree depending upon the mastery of the principle. They have learned how to use it instead of being used by it. In this and similar methods consist the art of Hermeticists. The master of Hermetics polarizes himself at the point which he desires to rest, and then neutralizes the rhythmic swing of the pendulum which would tend to carry him to the other pole. All individuals who have attained any degree of self-mastery do this to a certain degree, more or less unconsciously, but the master does this consciously, and by the use of his will, and attains a degree of poise and mental firmness almost impossible of belief on the part of the masses who are swung backwards and forwards like a pendulum. This principle and that of polarity have been closely studied by the Hermeticists, and the methods of counteracting, neutralizing, and using them form an important part of the Hermetic mental alchemy. Six. The principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law, the Kybalion. This principle embodies the fact that there is a cause for every effect, an effect from every cause. It explains that everything happens according to law, that nothing ever merely happens, that there is no such thing as chance, that while there are various planes of cause and effect, the higher dominating the lower planes, still nothing ever entirely escapes the law. The Hermeticists understand the art and methods of rising above the ordinary plane of cause and effect to a certain degree, and by mentally rising to a higher plane, they become causers instead of effectors. The Hermeticists understand the art and methods of rising above the ordinary plane of cause and effect to a certain degree, and by mentally rising to a higher plane, they become causers instead of effects. The masses of people are carried along, obedient to environment, the wills and desires of others stronger than themselves, hereditary, suggestion, and other outward causes moving them about like pawns on the chessboard of life. But the masters, rising to the plane above, dominate their moods, characters, qualities, and powers, as well as the environment surrounding them, becoming movers instead of pawns. They help to play the game of life, instead of being played and move about by other wills and environment. They help to play the game of life instead of being played and moved about by other wills and environment. They use the principle instead of being its tools. The masters obey the causation of the higher planes, but they help to rule on their own plane. In this statement, there is a wealth of Hermetic knowledge. Let him read who can. Seven, the principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. The Kybalion. This principle embodies the truth that there is gender manifested in everything, the masculine and feminine principles ever at work. This is true not only of the physical plane, but of the mental and even the spiritual planes. On the physical plane, the principle manifests as sex. On higher planes, it takes higher forms, but the principle is ever the same. No creation, physical, mental, or spiritual, is possible without this principle. An understanding of its laws will throw light on many a subject that has perplexed the minds of men. The principle of gender works ever in the direction of generation, regeneration, and creation. Everything and every person contains the two elements or principles, or this great principle within it, him or her. Every male thing has the female element also. Every female also contains the male principle. If you would understand the philosophy of mental and spiritual creation, generation and regeneration, you must understand and study this Hermetic principle. It contains the solution of many mysteries of life. We caution you that this principle has no reference to the many base, pernicious, and degrading lustful theories, teachings, and practices which are taught under fanciful titles, and which are a prostitution of the great natural principle of gender. Such base revivals of the ancient infamous forms of the phallicism tend to ruin body, mind, and soul. And Hermetic philosophy has ever sounded the warning note against these degraded teachings, which tend towards lust, licentiousness, and perversion of nature's principles. If you seek such teachings, you must go elsewhere for them. Hermeticism contains nothing for you along these lines. To the pure, all things are pure. To the base, all things are base. Okay, thank you guys. Absolutely wonderful. I just want to reread that line where he said that this was a very important line, and it was in fact in the principle of cause and effect, and it was the last chapter. So I'll reread that. So let's go into that because I found that very interesting. So we'll read that one more time. But the masters rising to the plane above dominate their moods, characters, qualities, and powers, as well as the environment surrounding them, and become movers instead of pawns. They help to play the game of life, instead of being played and moved about by other wills and environment. They use the principle instead of being its tools. The masters obey the causation of the higher planes, but they help to rule on their own plane. In this statement, there is condensed a wealth of Hermetic knowledge. Let him read who can. I mean, guys, just wonderful. So what I take from that is that sort of going into the Buddha's way of life and teachings, and that there, as we were discussing the law of polarity, there are swings, the pendulum swings. So you can be happy, you can be sad, and perhaps sometimes, it's easy to get caught up in emotions. We're here to experience, that's okay. But over time you realize that a really big swing towards the happy side or a really big swing towards the negative side, they are just ranges of the same emotion. And going by Buddhist teachings, somewhere in the middle is a calm place, that's a quiet place. And when you learn how to bring yourself back into the middle at will and not get too caught up in the swirling of different emotions, that's when you then start to become a master. And when you can become a master and be the observer of your own emotions, thoughts, and what's going on, then you can really master your environment. Because if people are going to be acting a certain way, or there's certain events going to be happening, there's a certain distance. And when I say distance, I don't mean that you're separated from it, that you don't care, that you don't want to be involved in the day-to-day goings on. Although oftentimes when you go down this path, you need to actually, or at least I've found, that there's a time of becoming a hermit, staying away from, the things that you would normally do, from lots and lots of people, big groups. You just naturally withdraw for some time until you then learn how to go back out into the world. But it's natural that you do withdraw for some people. It certainly has happened to me. I would say I'm still in the hermit phase, definitely getting, also doing things as well. It's not that I just lock myself away, but I'm a very sociable person. I'm very outgoing. I'm an extrovert. But now I realise the value of just spending time with myself also. So that was a learning curve that I had to go on. But as part of that, when you start to be able to see your emotions and be the witness of them, I've been practicing this a lot lately as well, and I find it really works. So sometimes if you get caught up and you're really sad, I just imagine myself floating above my body and looking down at my body. Or if I have a pain, or I don't so much do it for the positive emotions. I tend to allow myself to get carried away in them, but really it's the same. So say if perhaps I had a pain in my foot, or something was happening, or I watched a movie and I was sad and started to cry or something, then you can literally just imagine yourself floating above your body and watching yourself, and just watching yourself be in the emotions. And you'd be surprised, or at least what happens to me is that there is this distance that comes over, and all of a sudden you feel very different. You're not engulfed in the emotion, you're not engulfed in the pain. You can observe it, and it changes how it feels within your body, even though you're giving yourself permission to feel it. You're not trying to change it or redirect it or stop yourself feeling it or replace it with a positive emotion. You're simply just detaching that little bit from it, and it does change things. So I feel like the better and better and better we get at practicing this, eventually you would become a master of your emotions. And by becoming a master of your emotions, therefore you can dominate your moods, your characters, qualities and powers, because you are in control. You are the guiding force. You can see what's happening. You're not just going along with everything here. You can see it from a different view. And therefore, when that happens, that then you have a greater effect on what's happening around you. So I feel that that's a very, very powerful statement, and particularly because it called it out as a very powerful statement, so I had to read it again. But I find this knowledge is really, it's great. And on the principle of gender, it's hard not to really speak about it, I guess, with everything that's going on in the world, and there's a lot of conversation around gender. So I don't want to get into that today, but I will be willing to discuss it. It's not that I don't want to discuss these things, but I feel everybody is entitled to their own opinions, to their own conversation. And I'm just going on this book, and what this book is speaking about and explaining in the Kybalion is that if you want to, go down the road of thinking that this has any truth in it, which I'm somebody who does, that there is a female and a male counterpart of things. And even in my own existence, I can see the balance of this. I know that when I was younger, I was a bit of a tomboy, and definitely as I grew up, I thought, I had to be strong and independent, and definitely I was allowing, I feel, my masculine side. I was encouraging that more. I was embodying that more. I was stepping into that more. Now, I was always a girl and very girly, but it was more of a character driver for me. And now that I'm older and I realise that I'm safe and I'm content, and it's okay to be yourself and to feel all the ways you want to feel, and that I don't need to protect anybody or myself. Wisdom as I grow is teaching me as I go. There's nothing I need to be clutching onto, and I'm still learning that lesson. But as I've been learning that lesson throughout my life, the feminine has started to come through more, because I've allowed myself to be that little bit more open and wear my heart on my sleeve, if that makes any sense. I'm just explaining my own experience, and I could go into more detail about it. But yes, I can understand how that chapter might be a bit of a touchy subject, or, possibly not one that everybody would like to speak about. But in the caption, or the capsule, I should say, of this book, The Kybalion, I can see how it relates to my own life. And really, it's explaining something on a far greater scale. Just that, we're talking about the laws of the universe here, not on any one individual. So maybe even me going into my own individual explanation of it wasn't helpful, but look, that's the way it is. So it's been wonderful to have you with me again. As always, much appreciated. I hope you have a fabulous day. I'm really looking forward to seeing you again for chapter 3, mental transmutation. So do stay tuned for that, and we'll get back to this very soon. Saturday, 6 p.m. London Standard Time, or Irish Standard Time. That's the time that these come out, GMT, 6 p.m. Saturday. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching. Much love, and have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for watching. It's my absolute pleasure to discuss these topics with you. And if you've enjoyed today's show, please do like, comment, subscribe, and get in touch. Let me know what you like and what you'd like me to discuss next. Peace, love, and light, guys. Go out there and shine your light. Love you all.